being vulnerable actually required you to have courage, required you to actually have strength to be able to share what your weaknesses are or what you're afraid of.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Women Worldwide. Wherever you are in this great big world, thank you so much for being here and for tuning in with all that goes on in your world. We appreciate your time and your attention. So I want to get right to today's topic, which is cultivating culture and how timely, because we're at a time when we're still working remotely. So what does that mean for an organization, keeping people together so that they can thrive and be their very best and feel like they belong, and to be a part of a brand when there aren't as many touch points as in-person touch points? And I've got somebody joining me on the show today who can share a lot about this topic. Special guest today is Terese Lam, and she is the Chief People Officer at Wind River. And Terese is actually responsible for the company's global HR function. She's on the executive management team because she has 20 plus years of international HR and talent management experience. And she's worked in places because she's lived around the world in Australia and the UK, France, Singapore, and now she's in the US. Well, I could say a lot about Terese, but I think it's time that she shares her journey and advice with you. Terese, welcome. Welcome to Women Worldwide.
Thank you so much, Deetra. I'm so honored to be part of this podcast, so thank you so much. Look, I started my journey in Australia, so you probably hear from my accent. So I grew up in Australia, and I started my HR career in Australia over 20 years ago, as you said. I graduated with a business degree majoring in HR, and I sort of just stumbled into to loving HR at university when I did a subject there. Wow, this is really what I want to do, learn about, more about people and what drives, organizations through people. So from there, after I graduated, I moved into, my very first job was with a recruitment firm, but I quickly found out that, look, working for a recruitment firm isn't HR, right? So I left there. And I started my career actually as working in accounting for a company so that I can get in a company, prove myself, and when an opening came up, move into HR. And that's what I did. There was an opening, so I applied and moved to Sydney. I was actually from Brisbane. So I was in Australia for about 10 years. My opportunity to really leave Australia and go abroad was with a French company, Alstom. They had an operations in Singapore, so I was given the opportunity to expatriate there and lead HR in for the region, Asia Pacific. So I did that for a few years, and then moved to Paris, UK, London, in learning and development, leading learning and development function globally for the company. Which was a great experience for me, being really specialized rather than being a journalist and HR business partner. So I did that and was promoted to talent management. And I really, love developing people, love, cultivating talent. And that really gave me, insights into really, how to identify great talent and how to really, develop executive talent. So I was there for a few years, and for personal reasons, I wanted to move to the US. So this is how I got to where I am today. I left that role in talent management, still with Alstom, but there was an opening to lead HR for the software business in Seattle. So that's where I got to move to Seattle. And that was during the time Alstom was bought out by GE as well. So I did that for a few years with GE. And my end destination was the Bay Area. So I left Seattle to move to the Bay Area. That's when I left also, GE. I did a bit of, I left the corporate HR during that time, started an after school business, but really my passion was corporate HR. So I sold that business and moved back into HR and with App Dynamics, a company that got by Cisco. But then, App Dynamics was quickly being integrated into Cisco. So the HR role, the leadership role that I had, changed. So I left App Dynamics Cisco and moved to Wind River as the Chief People Officer. That's where I am today.
Oh my goodness. Well, you certainly have a rich background in HR. I love when people say, I was taking courses or I discovered early on their passion. It really stuck with you, Terese, and it speaks to the work that you love to do. And as a Chief People Officer, which is such a great title, because a title can certainly define who you are and what you care about. And it's wonderful that you are a Chief People Officer. It is about the people, because the people are the greatest asset in an organization. So I'll toss this out to you. Even pre-global pandemic, what helps people to thrive in an organization?
I think what's really important is the energy, right, and that an organization is exuding. And when you think about culture, culture is the backbone of a company. So it's really important that we get it right, that it really enables people to be their best self, right? People want to be part of a winning organization, right? They want to be part of something bigger than themselves. And so when you think about culture, and culture is the behaviors, right? It's the norms of the people. So when it's designed by the people, it just thrives, right? And so that's what we did at Wind River was, really 2 years ago when I started, it was really about, coming up with a culture that, because we're a global company as well, coming up with a common culture across the world. So when you're going and interacting with, people in Romania, in China, there's this connection on the culture, right? I'm not talking about country culture, but company culture. So, I did a world tour and really designed the culture with the people. I think what's also important, in terms of thriving is making sure that, the culture is aligned and enables the company's strategy and direction, right? We were at Wind River changing our North Star, changing our direction from a known as a real-time operating system company to an intelligence systems company, right? Being a thought leader in that new space. And so what really, really needed to make sure was the culture, was it enabling the company to be innovative, right? Was it enabling the company and the people to take risk, be bold, right? To learn from mistakes and to learn and to iterate. So that was really important, for us to drive that change. I think also, keep culture simple, right? I think, we've been really fortunate that, we're really about focusing on 3 cultural attributes at Wind River. It's about, diversity and inclusion. It's growth mindset, because we really believe that, cultivating a growth mindset. So growth mindset in individuals and, as a collection of people as well, was really important for every one of us to take risk and be bold and to take on challenges. And the last one was being really customer focused, right? Making sure that everyone in what we were doing was really solving the biggest, problems that customers had. So we just really focused on those 3 key cultural attributes over the last few years. And then lastly, just making sure that people knew what their expectations were, and it relates to culture, the expected behaviors, right? Because if you just have culture as written words, but it's not embedded in everything that we're doing, it's not, it's expressed in behaviors, right? Then people aren't going to live and breathe and thrive, right? So that, those were the learnings, and I guess, the advice that I would, share in terms of making sure that, culture does really thrive in an organization.
Well, I find it interesting that you honed in on three specific areas, because keeping it simple really helps. And then
Right.
also, you mentioned that you sort of did this culture tour. You went from country to country. And being that you can't go and meet with people or bring groups together, and I know that we were talking a little earlier about Monday workshops that you do. What is the best way? Is it Zoom that brings people together? How do you make up for the loss of the in-person touch points that we had, a couple of years ago that we don't have today?
Well, it really, I think it's an opportunity to be, creative here, right? And so, those touch points that, you used to have in person, of course, how do you cultivate those touch points remotely, right? And so, not just Wind River, but many other companies are coming up with creative ways, right, to really connect people, whether it be, through Zoom, leveraging technology, right? And leveraging technology also for social settings, right? So we thought about, okay, how do we do workshops differently to help people to be interactive rather than just death by PowerPoint, for example, right? So those workshops,
Right.
actually, back then when I did the world tour, we have about 300 people working remotely. So I actually had to do the workshops via Zoom anyway at that time, right, to make sure that I was also collecting valuable information and insights from people who work remotely, right? Their experiences of culture was a little bit different, of course, right? But certainly, it was very valuable to have those sessions over Zoom too. But back to your question around how do you keep people connected, remotely? Yeah, it's also through what I would say. Uh, um, for social settings, but emails, more frequent emails. It's through virtual coffees and teas, right? That you may have. So our executives used to go out and when they visit a site, myself as well. You have roundtables, you have town halls. Now we do them virtually, right? And in fact, I was talking to one of my team members who works, remotely. She said, I'm actually loving the fact that everyone's remote because I feel like I'm on a level playing field, with everyone else who was in offices, and I missed out, right? Because now we're all doing everything remote. So, I think finding opportunities, every, touch points that you have, being intentional as well, really being intentional about those touch points is really key. And we've been really fortunate. We've kept pulse surveys going, and actually being more frequent on pulse surveys to make sure that people were feeling connected, right? We communicated to managers as well. Make sure you have more frequent one-on-ones, make sure you have more frequent touch points over Zoom chats, right? So there's that Slack, there's Zoom chats, just making sure that you're checking in, right? Just, really quickly. So I think, it's created some challenges, but I think it's also created a lot of opportunities for a lot of companies as well.
I do too. Do you think that being remote and having these touch points, even though it appears that it would be less personal, I'm finding that the people and the teams that I work with were more personal. We're at the
Absolutely.
beginning, we're recognizing what's in somebody's background. Like even your background, you had explained to me that it's a picture that you had taken, or maybe even I'm finding that before we start work, we check in, how is everybody doing? What's going on? And people are feeling more comfortable to say, it's been a crazy morning. My kid was late going to whatever program, or so sharing challenges. Do you find that more?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Separation between your personal life and your work life is just completely merged now, right?
Right.
There's not that separation anymore. You see, kids running around in the background, right? You see dogs coming up, and it's just really. I think it's really refreshing actually because that connection. On the personal side has really exasperated, right? It's created, as I mentioned before, new opportunities for us to get to know each other at a different level, right? And so, to your point, it definitely has, created actually a stronger bond for many people, because you empathize as well, because everyone's on in the same boat. It doesn't matter if you're in Japan, right, over in France, Germany, everyone's in the same boat, working from home, right? And so, yeah, I think it definitely has created those, personal opportunities for people to get to know each other even more.
I agree. So share maybe you've had this wonderful journey in HR and talent management. Was there ever a moment in your learning experience where you had just a big aha moment, or even an uh-oh moment, that you found your way and something that stuck with you, like a learning lesson almost, that you would want to share?
Yeah, one that really sticks out is a few years ago. For most of my career, I worked in engineering companies, right? So majority of men, right? So usually it's like 20, 30%, women. Sometimes I'm an only male in the room. And so it was always important for me, to stand my own, be able to speak up, have strength, be confident, exude confidence, and assert myself, right, to speak up. But a few years ago, I led a team back at App Dynamics, who asked me to be vulnerable. And I was like, wow, what is that word? I've never been asked, to be vulnerable, because that's the opposite of, confidence, right?
Right.
So they asked me in the context of, being able to connect with me more. And so that was the very first time, as I said, I was asked to be vulnerable. So I had to learn how, I had to do some research, and, what does vulnerable mean, right? As a leader, because, you've been taught that as a leader, you need to be confident, you need to exude, strength. The lesson learned was, being vulnerable actually required you to have courage. Required you to actually have strength to be able to share, what's what your weaknesses are, or what you're afraid of, right?
You're stepping out of your comfort zone, clearly,
exactly.
face some kind of a fear. It's not necessarily natural for a woman on an executive leadership team to be vulnerable. But what I'm finding as a woman in business myself is that being vulnerable leads to more trust, and
Absolutely.
especially with younger generations in the workplace. So when you look at millennials or Gen Z coming in, a lot of them want to be able to share openly what's going on and how they feel. But I think it is a leader's level of vulnerability that if you sort of put something forward first, somebody else feels like they can share.
Right.
And that's what builds the trust, so you can get to a place of empathy. And that would be amazing in the workplace.
You're absolutely right. And my team were a team of a lot of, millennials. Yeah, exactly. To your point. So yeah, it was the very first time. But now, I'm saying to my leaders and to the executive team, be vulnerable, because exactly to your point, it builds trust. And it builds that, that deeper connection with your team. So that's, the aha moment.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
I think everybody should learn a lesson from what you just shared. That what would you say if somebody said, so everybody out there, everybody watching or listening, what would you say if somebody said, be vulnerable? What would you share? And that's really interesting, because it challenges you.
No, it does. It does absolutely, challenge you to, to be able to, share, some of the areas that, that, you have to work on, right? So what I did was I've always believed in, self-awareness. So I actually got my executive coach recently to work with my team, with not me in the room, virtually, of course, asking them about, what I should do as a leader to, to continue or stop or to start, right, doing better, to be a better leader. And so they had that discussion, and then I came in and she deliberated, in front of everyone. And so I was putting myself out there, right, and being vulnerable about, areas, and I just had to suck it up, areas where, where I had to continue to develop. And I was like, thank you very much for your feedback. This is what I'm going to do about it, right? And so, I do suggest, all the leaders out there to do something like that, because it really does create, that extra connection with your, because, they see that what you're trying to do is be a better leader to help them be better, be their best versions of themselves as well. And you're putting yourself out there, right?
What a great exercise. I mean, first of all, kudos to you for bringing in.
Oh, that was scary.
I mean, that is definitely scary. I often say, so I've developed a model called FEEL, and it's an acronym. It's a communications model, and the acronym stands for face your fears, engage with empathy, use ethics and good judgment, and unleash your love. And I believe that you have to have a feel lens in all of your communication. But I often think that business professionals, maybe they think they feel to the highest level in all parts of that. And what you see of yourself certainly is not the experience of your team. We even created a test online so that people could test how much they feel first in their communication. So when I hear you with this exercise, you're getting a glimpse of right there on the ground what people need from you, so that you can say, oh my gosh, this is what I need to do. This is how I can improve. That's your test right there.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It was not easy. It was not easy, but to your point, it's really important to be able to face your fears, as you said, face your fears, but also be, empathetic to the team, to be able to, build a trust as well. So I feel like I'm extra close to my team, and hopefully they feel closer to me as well.
I bet they do.
So,
Just being able to share that in a safe place with an executive coach, and you hearing that feedback, and then willing to thanking them and willing to work on it, that builds trust. Definitely.
Hopefully, yes.
I'm sure they appreciate it. I'm wondering, with everything that you're doing and all that you're experiencing as an executive leader and managing teams and being responsible for HR on a global level, how are you keeping yourself focused and sort of motivated every day? Because I'm sure, even just knowing that you did a Monday morning workshop at 8:30 in the morning, that's a lot. So how are you staying focused and motivated?
How do I stay focused and motivated? I do mindfulness and meditation, right? That's really important. A busy day, right? You got to do it in the morning. You got to check in during the day in that as well. But I think on a more deeper level is connecting to your, right? Connecting why you're doing this, right? On a personal level, your personal why, but also your outer why as well. What I call inner why and outer why. Your personal why and your why. Why are you here? Right? What are you trying to, achieve impact, right? As a chief people officer, I have a mission out there. And so, connecting, to that why and the objectives. So the objectives keep me focused, keeps my team focused as well. But it keeps me going, keeps me motivated, especially when things aren't going so well, right? You got to keep, going back to the why to keep, especially when you're trying to overcome challenges or setbacks, right? It's really important to connect it back to that why.
That's really good. Well, I can hardly believe that I'm going to be asking you to give parting advice. So tell us, Terese, and everybody who's watching and listening, what can you share? What advice do you want to give about staying close and bonding and building that trust?
The several vices, hopefully I can share that. Vulnerability, we just talked about that, right? I think, the first step that, the leaders who are listening can do is go out there and do one thing that's vulnerable with their team, right? Whether it be, sharing, what scares them, or what they're fearing, or what they don't know as well, right, is really important. Secondly is just be much more intentional about connecting with people, asking about their personal life, how they're going, right? Because we can just jump into sometimes just jump into the things to do, or the business aspects of life, but people want to feel connected with their leaders, wants to feel connected with their manager, on a much more personal level. So I think that's really important as well, is to ask, how are you going in your life, or your family, and what's happening around you. I think that's important. So, I'd say those two key advice: intentional, being personal connections, and be vulnerable.
Vulnerable, be intentional, and you will all thrive together. Well,
hopefully, yes.
Yes. Last question, super easy. Where can people find out more about you and your company?
LinkedIn. I think, LinkedIn is so powerful these days, right? So connect with me on LinkedIn. Wind Rivers on LinkedIn as well, or our website. But LinkedIn, I would say.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing your journey, talking about culture and all the ways that we can be more bonded together. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Deidre. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And thank you to all of you for tuning in and for being here. Please keep the conversations going and the feedback coming. And you can find me on LinkedIn and also on Twitter. I'm at Dee Breckenridge. And if you want to share any feedback in an email, you can certainly reach out to me, Deirdre at pureperformancecom with 2Ms.com. Okay, friends, until our next episode, stay focused, energized, and feeling empowered. Thank you.